maybe it's middle-aged dudes that play in their mom's basements. All of those things are true. There are middle-aged dudes that play in their mom's basement still. But when I think about D&D, I think about who I want to be in the story. So how do I want to influence the story? So do I want to sow chaos by being a swindling poison dart dog that happens to fulfill a 200-year-old curse? Do I want to kill the corrupt king and realize he was actually a puppet all along? Or do I want to kill everything in my path without thinking about the consequences and then break out fantasy prison? The possibilities are endless. Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game, or a TTRPG, that you can play from anywhere. I personally played at game stores, at conventions, at many different homes. I've even played over Discord when I had COVID, and I would recommend not doing character voices when you can hardly breathe, otherwise you have to stop the session. D&D is played with one person that acts as the storyteller, also known as the Dungeon Master, or DM, and then the rest of the people that are involved are called player characters, PCs, or as my group likes to call us, Chaos Gremlins. My entire worldview has changed thanks to the stories I've told with my friends, but that wouldn't be possible without a dream, the dream of Gary Gygax, who is also a man-child. Gygax created the first edition of D&D with his business partner Dave Arneson in 1974. They only had a budget of $2,000, so they only created 1,000 copies of the game, and they sold those for about $10 a pop. And a lot of the game mechanics were recycled from different games, Lord of the Rings as well. A lot of the characters in early D&D were hobbits were halflings, for example. First edition only had 3 small booklets. Unfortunately, we don't have any first edition at home, but this is a module that you can play that is exactly the same. They published 4 supplemental rulebooks to expand the possibilities later in the 80s. And they published additional rules in different gaming magazines, different classes and characters and all that fun stuff. In about 1975, his business partner, Dave Arneson, and several board members decided to leave the company because of Gygax's actions. He had a temper tantrum because he thought that people were trying to control the company. So that happened, which was really not cool about him. There have been several different editions since its inception. Advanced D&D, which was released in 1977. This is the second. This is the first edition of Advanced D&D. And then it was basically a compilation of everything that was released in first edition. They published 3 different books initially, which was the Player's Handbook, which is this one, and then the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide. They then released a D&D second edition in 1989. This is the Dungeon Master Guide from that edition. They more focused on backwards compatibility rather than focusing on creating new rules and settings and that kind of thing, which again, they're basically the same edition, unfortunately. Now, during this time, Arneson decided to sue Gary Gygax for rights, essentially for money, because his name was still tied to Dungeons & Dragons. He sued him twice, once in 1979 and once in 1985. The suit in 79 was dropped, and then they settled outside of court in 1985. But due to this, Gygax ran out of money, so he sold the company in 1997 to a small company called Wizards of the Coast. During this time, they were working on creating a 3rd edition of the game. After it was acquired by Wizards of the Coast, they finally released this edition. They kept a lot of the rules that Dave Arneson actually created, and then they got rid of most of Gary Gygax's rules because he made them super complicated. So they changed the way that people roll a hit. So instead of using FACO, which I still don't understand how to use it, They changed it to you roll a d20, add a modifier, and if you reach the number, you pass. So they also added new skills and character features, so people can really flesh out their characters. But before they released this edition, Wizards of the Coast was actually bought by Hasbro, so Hasbro owns basically everything, which is kind of funny. After acquiring Wizards of the Coast, they released 3.5 edition. I think this is still advanced D&D. This one is 3.5 edition. So they publish many different rule books. This one's the player handbook, which I always recommend having as a player. Complete with new monsters and settings. After reviewing feedback, feedback from the players, they released 4th edition in 2005, which added plenty of new features. They also started a program called Encounters to bring players into different game stores to play test the new material, which it allowed people to come in and only do like one session if they didn't have the time to keep doing sessions, because typically a game of D&D can last from anywhere from a couple months to a couple years. So this program got them to really be able to play test and do whatever they really wanted to. This program was so successful that it reinvigorated people's love for the game. Now there were several years between 4th edition, which was this one, and 5th edition. Many people actually really loved 4th edition, so why would they add a new one? Well, Wizards of the Coast decided to make 5th edition to celebrate the 40th anniversary of D&D. So this is one of the 5th edition books. Now there are over 300 different books that Wizards of the Coast have published for D&D, either game modules or different campaign settings. Obviously, different guides for players or dungeon masters and that kind of thing. Now, they released this at the 40th anniversary of the game at Gen Con, which is where Dave and Gary met in 1969, about 5 years before D&D was created. 5th edition has 14 core character classes with several different subclasses, meaning there are over 140 different options for players to use to create their characters. D&D started with only 3, so that's insane to me. But there's more to D&D than just the game. Obviously, there's pop culture, there's dice, there's miniatures, there's a market for people playing on their tabletop, that kind of thing. Video games, movies, podcasts, books, websites, TV shows. Really, if you can name it, D&D probably did it. There have been several different pop culture references, like on Rick and Morty. Stranger Things, for example, is like a huge one. Big Bang Theory, and then there are several big names, celebrities that endorse D&D, like Matthew Lillard, who was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. He actually owns a company that sells things that you can use to play D&D. Stephen Colbert, Vin Diesel, and Joe Manganiello, to name a couple. Without the mind of Gary Gygax, though, several franchises that I know and love wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have met my husband or several of my friends. I wouldn't have had a coping mechanism to move halfway across the state. So unfortunately, without the mind of this man-child, I would not have all the things that I love. So for everything he's done for the tabletop role-playing game community, I will always be thankful for him.